Pandora's box is about to open wide.
Welcome once again to Pandora's Box, ladies and gentlemen. Today we have another special guest on the show. It is Pat McNamara. To give you a bit of background information, Patrick McNamara spent 22 years in the United States Army working in their Special Operations Units. While working in the Premier Special Missions Unit, he became an impeccable marksman, shooting with accurate lethal results and tactical effectiveness. He retired from the Army's Premier Hostage Rescue Unit as a Sergeant Major. Pat is also the author of several books, including TAPS, which stands for Tactical Application of Practical Shooting, and Sentinel, which is all about becoming the agent in charge of your own protection detail. He's also the co-host of the University of Badassery podcast, which is available to you on Spotify, iTunes, as well as several other platforms. You can find him on Instagram as TMax Inc., Pat McNamara. And finally, if you'd like to try his coffee, search T-Max Blaze Ops Blend, which is made by Invader Coffee. Pat Mac, thanks for coming on the show, man. It's a real honor. I've been following you for about 6-7 years, I reckon.
Cool.
On Instagram, I've heard you on Jocko Willink's podcast. I've heard you on Joe Rogan's podcast.
Nice.
Say, like, avid follower, be following all the basic dude stuff.
Yeah.
You know, trying to learn those tenets, man. Trying to learn those tenets.
Right on. Good.
But yeah, it's a real honor to have you. Have you been on the radio in Britain before? Or?
Yes, I have. Yep,
Oh, you
several
have?
times. Yes.
Ah, nice, man, nice. Do
Yep.
you mind me asking what stations you were on over here? Or?
Oh, dude, I can't
remember. Fair
remember.
enough.
I do a lot of these, and I don't know. I appreciate doing them, especially like if we have a positive message and we could influence even one person, you know, to either get off their ass, to pull their to get out of a rut or what have you. Then I'm all about it.
100%, man. 100%. I completely agree. How's things in North Carolina at the moment? Going all good?
Real good. Hot as balls right now.
Or is it?
But the humidity's gone down this week. So even though it's in 90 degrees, the Fahrenheit, it's been pleasant this week.
Nice.
Because very low humidity, which is rare for us because we're high humidity here.
Right. Yeah, we're same in terms of humidity. We had a heat wave last week, so it got pretty hot. I'm awful with my Fahrenheit to centigrade.
I can understand the Celsius. I understand it.
Yeah, I'm real good with like pounds to kilos to stone and all of that good stuff. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like ounces and stuff to milliliters. But I'm awful with a Fahrenheit. But it got up to around sort of 30 degrees Celsius last week. But we've had like a really random for this time of year. We've had like a real temperature drop, and it's like it was like raining a minute ago. But I guess that's
wow.
For anybody that's listening, us like followed you here, like typical British story, I guess.
Right,
it's like raining in England, you know. But
yep.
That's awesome, man. For people that are long-time listeners of our show, what I'd really like to do today is almost like tell your story. And as I said, I've been following you for a long time. There's lots of things that I've like wanted to ask you, or maybe when I was watching you on Jocko Willink's podcast or on Joe Rogan's, like questions that they didn't ask you at certain points that I would like to ask you. So if you'd be happy to sort of tell your story, and then I'll sort of poke questions in, and sort of try and guide the thing. So if we start from the beginning, obviously I've given all the key background information about yourself. Where were you born?
Yeah, so I was born here in the United States, in the northeast in New England, in Connecticut. Just sort of a not middle class, but like lower middle class family. Sure. Typical New England story.
It's a nice place, Connecticut.
Yeah, there are nice. There's very nice places in Connecticut. Very nice, but I mean, mine was. It wasn't picture perfect, affluent type of neighborhood. It was a little rundown. Yeah, a little rundown, surrounded by housing projects.
Right,
yeah.
I see. So, what did your folks do for a living, if you don't mind me asking?
My mom was one of those adamant stay-at-home moms, housewife.
Yeah,
type of thing. Even though she was a registered nurse, she got her degree in nursing. She stayed at home. My dad was all over the map. Very, very, very ambitious. He was a beat cop, fireman, typical Irish American type of background, and then he became a school teacher, and he did that for decades. He took a hiatus from teaching for a minute and got into politics, and he was the mayor. He became the mayor of my town for 12 years.
That's freaking awesome.
Yeah,
Man. Badass dude.
just extremely ambitious. He just went go, 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 go. You know, I was among 5 kids in the family. When I was kind of a meek, gentle child, you know, oddball kind of child. I started going through a metamorphosis of sorts in my mid-teenage years. Started wrestling and working my ass off. I really felt that I understood the value of $1 pretty well when I started earning money. So I started working at about 13 or 14, and like I said, joined the wrestling team, became good at that. I sucked my first couple years, like beyond belief.
Why do you think that was? Were you just not physically built because of you were just before that you were, as you said, a bit more of an oddball and stuff like that into sports?
Very meek, mild, weak, weaker than the other kids because I wasn't into sports at a young age where most of them were. I'd be out in the woods picking flowers and watching birds while they were playing sports and doing those.
So when you say you were a bit of like an oddball kid, I mean, you've just sort of touched on it, saying you were out in the woods watching the birds and stuff. But like, what other stuff were you into when you were a real little kid before you started wrestling? You know, when you were as you described it, an oddball kid. Like, what were you into? What were your hobbies and stuff?
Well, the big one was bird watching. So. Not real popular for a young boy, you know. That's like an old man or old woman hobby, you know. But I got really into it starting at about the age of 10. My dad supported all my, I called them sissy hobbies. You know, like I started drawing at a young age and doing artwork. They enrolled me in a oil painting clinic that I go to once a week on the weekends. I rode a unicycle to school. You know, that's how odd I was. I mean,
man,
I did
love
shit
it.
like that. You know, I rode a freaking unicycle to school. So I got ass whoopings on the regular, you know.
Yeah?
Well, because I was small and redheaded, freckled. Yeah, just not a tough kid at all.
Sure, man.
But big into anything outdoors. You know, I was the kid at 12 years old who would bring home bouquets of flowers, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah, but it's all about balance, Pat, you know. Was your dad's like,
I mean, the thing is that at that point there was no balance yet.
Yeah, sure.
I was just all that.
Strange, almost like effeminate, yeah.
Yes, right. Until I started wrestling, and I just stuck with it even though I sucked. I mean, I didn't win a single match my first year. My second year, I won one match. And this was a whole new feeling to me. You know, a feeling of victory, to be victorious. And I wanted more of that feeling because I'd never had that feeling before. So I started working harder on that and then started working out like on my own, you know, because if you want to be good at anything, sport, music, whatever skill it is, you just can't rely on an instructor. You have to put in the hours. You have to be self-governed. So I put in the extra miles. I had a gym in my basement, a little makeshift gym. My neighbors were giving me weights and stuff like that. Nice. Started reading the, you know, like the muscle and fitness magazines. I forgot what they were called in the 70s. They were, I think it was called Muscle Mag. I think that was
There were a couple. I think there was like Muscle and Strength, Muscle Mag. Right. There was a couple of them. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I was reading those and still working. A couple part-time jobs, you know. I'd go from school, do my homework, go to work, work out, go to.
What were you doing for a job? What was your little kiddie job?
Oh, you know, the typical teenager. I mean, I started when I was a kid before the age of 16, having a legal job. I would I had a paper route, you know, delivering papers. I had 72 customers. It was a massive route. And I would also, I had customers that on the regular with 4 seasons, mow the lawn in the spring and summer, rake the leaves in the fall, shovel the driveways in the winter, and early spring turn gardens, stuff like that. So I had those kind of customers that I could return to every season. Once I got to the age of 16 where I could get a job, my first job was at Dunkin' Donuts. You know, busting suds, washing pans, and things like that. And I also worked at a grocery store. So I did both those at the same time, one part-time job to another. And the grocery store was, just grocery store stuff, stocking shelves, policing up carts,
Sure.
those kind of things. And then with the wrestling came my ambition to join the military. I was thinking about it probably at age 16. That was on my radar already.
What was it about the military that stood out to you?
I think it was because I was wrestling and I like that feeling of teamwork, working with a team, being self-governed, being physically fit, and feeling that sense of victory. When the first time you feel that, when you never have it in your life, you're like, oh man, that is good. And that was me. I did that, I want more of that. So it was kind of the logical path to pursue after high school. The military. And I knew nothing about the military, very little. When I went to the recruiters, we had a recruiter row, in a shopping center. They were all stacked up one after the other, Army, Marines, Navy, Air Force. I just went to each one of the recruiters and just chit-chatted with them. And I asked them all a stupid, typical, cocky, young teenage question. What's the hardest thing I could do in the Marine Corps, in the Army, in the Air Force, in the Navy? And the Army at the time had the best answer. Plus, they had the coolest recruiting posters, too.
Right.
The posters.
What do they look like?
They were just badass. The Army had a massive one, Army Airborne Rangers and Green Berets, Special Forces. And there were big posters, guys cammied up with ropes around their shoulders and guns coming out of the water, It just like, wow, I want
for a young man looking at that, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I want to be that guy right there.
Yeah, for sure.
The Army had those two options that I could just kind of slip into, barring you make it. I had those two options that I could sign up for, not slip into. I chose the Special Forces route. And so I went to, did the typical stair-step approach, infantry basic training to airborne school to the Special Forces course. And it was a long, arduous process for me. It was not easy. Lots of slippery slopes, lots of bumps in the road. I had several failures along the way, several injuries along the way. But
what sort of injuries did you get, man?
Well, my first one, 18 years old in airborne school, I was what is referred to as a toad jumper. So those of people out there who have jumped static line before, this is a pretty common term. It's a common term. It doesn't happen frequently.
Okay.
Where you have an inboard cable that runs the length of the aircraft. You hook up your static line to that, and as you approach the door, you pass that static line off to a jump master. He collects it up. You jump out. You reach the end of your extension cord, and it deploys your chute. Kind of a knuckle dragger version of jumping. It's idiot proof. But mine, my second jump in airborne school, there was some kind of malfunction where my extension cord or my static line got caught under my reserve and around my arm, and subsequently towed me with the aircraft. So I was on the outside of the aircraft, smashing against the plane. It eventually came loose and deployed my chute, but I was jacked up from it. I had broken ribs, concussion, dislocated shoulder, and it pulled my bicep into my forearm. So it toothpaste tubed my bicep right down into my forearm.
So completely detached your bicep, did it?
Yeah, completely detached it. Yep. So I was a mess for months. But the thing is, I was 18 and fit. Yeah. So recovery was pretty quick. I think I finished jump school about September, October, November, December. About 5 months later,
Okay.
I recovered and was able to.
That's pretty
continue.
good, considering. Do
Yeah.
you remember what was going through your mind when you were on the outside of the airplane and you were like smashing against it? Were you thinking like,
Absolutely
I'm going to die?
freaking nothing but pure freaking terror.
Yeah,
Thinking, well, shit, is this what every jump's going to be like?
yeah, sure.
This sucks bad. Absolute freaking terror, and I'd never felt real pain yet. You know, the kind of pain that puts you into shock.
Sure.
So that was real legitimate. You know, when you hit the ground, you're throwing up and you're just out of it. You're very, very shocky. But was able to recover from that and went through the Special Forces course. Had a couple bumps in the road. You know, failure here and there. So it was longer for me than most people. But then again, most people who go to that course they're prior service. They've already got 5 years in at least.
How rare is it to just dive straight into Special Forces?
It's very rare, you know,
Very
especially as a teenager. But
do you think that's because most teenagers would find it too daunting and not like necessarily pushed in that direction, or
it's a mature man's school. You know, it requires a knowledge base. The physical portion I had no problem with. You know, I was fit. I was a state champion wrestler. But what do you know when you're 19 years old? Because I'm 19 at this point. What do you know? You're dumber than a brick with a hole in it. You know, I don't know anything about patrolling or writing an operations order or anything about unconventional warfare or none of it.
Yeah.
So the school portion just sucked, even out in the woods, like leadership, for example, on patrolling. I don't know anything about leading troops. I never have. But I made it through that and was assigned to a Special Forces unit, 1st Special Forces Group out of Fort Lewis, Washington State, and spent a few years there. And it was good. It was fun, but you know, it's the 80s, so it's peacetime army, and all we're training for is, you know, the big Soviet machine. You know, that's
Cold
all
War.
you know is what are the superpowers, you know, in the world, and who's our big threat, and who's got the most nukes.
Was it just Russia at the time, really?
Russia and China.
Still China then, back in those days as well.
Still today.
I can't remember back then, those days. I mean, I just remember when I was younger, China wasn't really seen as much of a threat to the West as it is today.
Right.
They were just sort of just, you know, making everything and trying to frickin'
they were making
export everything. Yeah, building up their economy, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Spent a couple years there, and I got recruited. It was 1987-ish. A recruiter came to Fort Lewis and had 10 names. He wanted to talk to the guys, us 10. I was amongst them, and he recruited us for a job out of a Cold War job that worked out of Berlin, Germany. It was very, very vague. You know, it was riddled with ambiguity. I had no clue as to what it really was, but it was probably better than what I was doing at the time, you know. So now I could get my feet wet in the big picture, you know, the Cold War, you know, the big machine, the big scary cloak and dagger stuff.
Yeah.
So they sent me to language school to learn German out of Monterey, California, Defense Language Institute. And then went there, and what we were doing, we were like a stay-behind force in case the balloon went up. So it was a plainclothes job. You're running networks and setting up just different cells and things like this in case the balloon went up. You're living on the economy. It was all real cloak and dagger stuff. And we weren't the only ones doing it. You know, a lot of folks were doing the same thing at the time.
When you say a lot of folks, you mean like different countries, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Did you work at all with any?
You guys were doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Did you ever work with any like British Special Forces, like on those? Sort of
but that came later.
Right.
While I was at the unit, and man, freaking loved those guys. They were like, out of all the special ops guys on the planet, I think cut from the same cloth were the 22nd guys, you know, the SAS guys. They were they're awesome. Really good freaking eggs, man. Just hard as freaking nails. Loved those guys. Because I've had the opportunity of working with so many different special ops units across the world. And the thing is, when it comes to special ops, they're all great. You know, these countries, they all produce really, really.
It's the creme de la creme, isn't it?
Right. They all produce really premier troops, you know, and they all have a selection process. And the unit selection process was kind of based and molded off the SAS selection process. So I was working in Berlin, and then there was scuttlebutt that the unit I was working in was going to be kind of dissolved. And then I got recruited for another job. Some guy came there and said, hey, there's another job working out of Potsdam, East Germany. And that was basically active spying on the Soviet army in Soviet East Germany.
Wow.
I was like, hell yeah, sign me up for that.
That's cool, man.
Man, and that was really cool. I did that for about a year and a half.
How did that go? Like, how tense was that?
It wasn't tense until it was.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because what you hoped for is that that it's not tense, that you're able to accomplish your mission. So the way it would work in a nutshell is it was a very small unit, about 100 strong. It was called United States Military Liaison Mission. And there were about 100 slots. Most of them were intel weenies. And there was a small pool of individuals, 7 or 8 of us, and we were called tour NCOs. And you would intel would be driven from satellite imagery and this and that, and you'd go on these missions. It was 2-man missions. So you had a Special Forces NCO, German speaker, WIPID expert, Warsaw Pact ID expert, and you had an officer who was a Russian speaker and also Warsaw Pact identification expert. And you jump in your Mercedes Geländewagens, go across the Glienicke flash your credentials to the Soviet at the bridge, and they knew what we were doing. It was all cat and mouse. They knew. Oh, yeah. They knew what we were doing.
It's just one of those things where, like, unless they can prove it, they can't do anything about it.
Right. Unless you're caught doing dirty deeds red-handed, they had complete autonomy. They had carte blanche to smoke your stinking ass in a nanosecond. And dudes were executed.
Yeah.
Yep, dudes were executed.
What were their, like, general attitudes like towards you? Were they, like, aggressive towards you, like, in their general behavior?
The hardline commies, absolutely.
Yeah.
The young troops, they didn't give a shit. You know, the young troopies. And so I would chat those guys up for intel.
Grooming them.
Because they're just young. They're just young conscript troopies, you know?
Yeah.
And in our
easy to manipulate.
System, right, yeah. And we had stuff in our supply system that we'd bring across, because most of it was real snooping pooping stuff where you're in this Geländewagen and it's very, very capable off-road. And most of the travel that we would do in Soviet East Germany was all on dirt roads. And it was very high-speed stuff in a low-tech world.
Sure.
So if you could imagine, you know, this is prior to GPS, so you were naviging on 1/24,000 topographical maps, trip meter on the dash, the Gen 1 PVS-5 nods, but the cars were very capable. We were very good drivers because you had to go to driving schools, and then the back end of the car was just loaded with photo gear, and then we had cameras that were mounted on the roof and would record anything through the windshield as well. And then a big console on the dashboard, you know, record, stop, all this. Just so
was this all very inconspicuous stuff? Like very.
It was. We tried to keep it as inconspicuous as possible. But yeah, the Soviet troops, the troopies, the young kids, you know, in our supply system, we had stuff like Penthouse magazines, Johnny Walker. We had food, Marlboro cigarettes, you know, those kind of things.
And obviously back in like Soviet Union, like sort of era, like all of those Cold War countries, all the countries under the Soviet Union were like, had like no good food, like no good stuff.
Dude,
so I bet you having this stuff.
they lived in squalor, bro.
Yeah,
it's not like troops in countries we're used to. I mean, when they would put these kids in a foxhole to be, what did they call them? Like range caretakers. So in between training, they just bivouac for like a couple weeks at a whack in a foxhole. guarding like an SA-11 range. And their rations daily were like cardboard flavored bread and brown cabbage. So if you pull up and you go, "Hey guys, can we share lunch with you?" And you're pulling out like, big cans of like Denny Moore beef stew and things like that. They were like, "Hell yeah, you could share lunch with us."
Yeah, sure.
I've never seen that stuff before.
Yeah.
So they were easy to get intel from, and then exchange cigarettes. Like, "Oh, you're smoking Garrisons? Yeah, I love Garrison. What Garrison you from?"
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And then exchange them, Marlboros for Garrisons, which sucked. They were really bad. Their cigarettes were horrible. But yeah, and after, so now there's scuttlebutt about the wall coming down, 89. And then reunification in 91. So it's like, well, damn, where do I go from here? So the next logical step, because I'm kind of high on the totem pole right now, I'm reaching the pinnacle.
Sure.
I'm reaching the tip of the spear.
How many years are you in Special Forces by this point?
By this point, 91, so 83, 7 years. 7 years.
Okay. And sorry,
So I'm fast tracking pretty good.
Yeah, and while you were in East Germany, did you ever come close to getting caught at any point?
Oh shit!
Or did you did you know anyone close to you that did get caught? I know you mentioned that some people got executed. Like, did you know anybody?
Yeah, I got caught. Well, and chased several times, and that's when you said, I forget the term you used. Not unnerving, daunting, but
yeah.
Whatever it was, man, the stress, when you get busted doing something and you're getting chased on a tank trail by, let's say, a BMP-2. I call those the velociraptors of the Soviet kit world, when two BMP-2s are chasing you through the woods and you're on tank trails, you're just flooring this thing, man. Or a PTS-2 or a T-72 or a T-80 reactive or a SS-21 is chasing you. Oh man,
it's like a James Bond movie.
yeah, and that was on the reg. Getting chased like that. That was on the reg, and then you had the Stasi too, who were after you. The East German secret police,
right?
Because they did not like us snooping around in their country. It's Soviet, so there's no ownership.
Sure.
It's all commie.
So they were working with the Soviets.
They were, yes, the Stasi.
Yeah. Oh right.
Yep.
That's crazy.
There was collaboration there.
Was that? Do you think that's like an element of Stockholm syndrome, where they just sort of grew up with that? You got used to it.
Yeah, probably. I mean, they have a common cause. They're all communists, so they're on the same team.
Sure.
It's not like they're venturing into a political realm that is in opposition to their beliefs. They've got vested interests just as well.
Yeah.
And so when that started drying up, my next step was to go to selection for the unit, and I got orders and I went and I freaking failed. I broke my ankle on like the first day. I walked on it for another week.
How did you break it?
Just running with a rucksack on in the dark.
Right. Bad foot placement, snap.
Right.
That's done.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Running downhill, over rocks and crap like that.
These things happen.
Yeah. There's a lot of luck in the process, when it comes to special ops career. There's a lot of luck involved.
Funnily enough, man, I actually just tore my hamstring on Friday just sprinting. Full speed, pop, agony, boom, here I am. Probably between grade 2 or 3, I'm getting it like an evaluation tomorrow, but yeah, need to assess how bad my tear is, but probably I felt the pop and it's been bad, and I'm on day 5 now, so yeah, no, just saying, these things happen, like it's not rare.
Right. Yeah. It's the opportunity is always there when you're getting some, when you're, want to maintain a certain level of fitness, or you want to level up, the opportunity is always there to get injured.
Yeah.
I mean, as we get older, we learn to be more tentative and a little more careful.
Yeah, sure.
I don't want another injury, I'm already ailing and I'm always nursing existing
Pre-existing
injuries.
niggles.
Yes.
Not niggles,
Right.
as you sort of call them.
Right.
There's always something nagging you, your elbow's
Yep.
a bit like
Right.
weird, like, or something, yeah.
So I didn't make selection, but they invited me to come back. So I chose to volunteer to go to the schoolhouse, the Special Forces schoolhouse, which was a gamble because that was a 4-year commitment. I did not want to
Long
be
time.
in that schoolhouse for 4 years.
Yeah.
But got better, healed up, started working out, started training, went back to selection and made it. And then I spent another 13 years in the unit. Yep, in USASOC, United States Special Operations Command. So now
13 years.
Yep.
And what was that sort of 13 years look like? What were you doing during that
It was
time?
great. It was great. Well, there was in the 90s there wasn't a lot going on, but we were always busy.
Sure.
Always busy.
For like what reason?
Well, because there's always bad guys.
Sure, sure.
There are always people wishing to undo the stability of the world. Some people just want to see the world burn. That kind of thing.
Michael Caine, yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yep. Bingo. So there were always different folks on the radar. And we did, I won't get into it too much, but we did a lot of kind of paper thin undercover work around the world that would allow us to get into certain areas of the world where we didn't have autonomy as a military special operations unit.
Right, right.
And
So
then
more cloak and dagger, all cloak and dagger.
yes, right.
Yeah.
Yep, a lot of that. And then, of course, 2001, GWOT kicked off, and then the process starts all over. When the GWOT kicked off, I was in the schoolhouse. I was at the unit school doing OTC, Operators Training Course. So I had to watch everybody deploy over and over and over. Finally,
That was painful.
Yeah, finally, I pushed to Iraq the first time in 2004 and then in 2005. It was painful, but I got a piece of it and then retired in 2005. And from there, civilian life, that transition was like, holy shit, man, what, another big learning curve there. And then
I guess the last time you'd been a civilian, you were essentially a kid in a man's body.
A kid, right?
Like we all are when we're 18 years old. You might think you're a man at the time, but you're not really.
Nope.
You're like a kid in a man's body. It's a
you
big
haven't
difference.
really approached adulthood yet.
Yeah, for
Struggling,
sure.
worried, because you're never worried about job security until you are.
Yeah.
And it's like, what is job security? It's not like the Army's going to fire me.
Did you have like a plan, coming out of the military, like a plan of what you were going to do, or where did you go and live, like all of that stuff?
I had no plan whatsoever. Thankfully, low-hanging fruit kind of just plopped into my lap, and I picked that low-hanging fruit, which I always advise people against, or I tell them, you know what, when you transition out of the military, low-hanging fruit is fine temporarily. But don't consider it a career afterlife. Try to do things on your own. Become an entrepreneur, And then also, don't put all your eggs in one basket. I've learned these lessons so many times, but I tell people that all the time. Just because you have a job and you consider it job security because you have a steady paycheck, that shit could freaking slip through the cracks in a nanosecond. It's not, nothing's concrete, nothing's galvanized. So you've got to have different sources of income because at this point, I'm married, I've got 2 little kids. So that was a big lesson learned because I took.
So you married while you were in the military?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Was that, how was that? Was that strange, like coming out and suddenly being with your family, like all the time rather than.
Oh, yeah. But it was great because I lived vicariously through my little kiddies, So it gave me a chance to become a kid again, to play and do that kind of thing. So I loved it, man. I just hung out with the kiddies because my marriage was pretty rocky after I retired for years and years. So I just hung out with the kids any chance I got. I was gone a lot still on short trips because I worked for this corporation, that low-hanging fruit, for about 4 years. So I was going on short trips, just training trips, because I was doing what I was meant to do, train people. I was building a tactical type of unit or tactical training team for this corporation. And it became very successful. I started branding me, not the corporation.
Well, you had the credentials, man, you had the credentials.
I started branding me,
Yeah.
And that's when I realized, branding, making yourself a product, that's a big, big deal in this world.
But the thing is, you'd already put in the hard work, because not anyone can make themselves a brand. You have to have the credentials to back it up. But with your 22 years of service, you've got the best credentials.
That's only pedigree, right? So pedigree only goes so far, because not everybody could do that, regardless of the pedigree, regardless of the background. But I had a knack for training people. And because I'm artsy fartsy, I was artsy fartsy as a kid, and that continued with me. So the creative lobe of my brain worked overtime versus the analytical side. So that was, it was something that I was built to do, was to train, teach, create. I am a creator, I like to build things and use my imagination. And come up with different training strategies and things like that. So it was successful. And then 4 years later, I got laid off from that corporation, which was scary as shit. It's like, what does that even mean? Yeah. What does that even mean?
Did they give you a reason why, or?
A larger corporation bought us out.
Oh, sure.
So they had to trim the fat. They had to basically lay off all of the full-time guys and just keep on their contractors.
Sure.
So it was a money thing. So I wasn't alone. They didn't point at me. There was I think there were 4 of us who were full-time guys, and they laid us off. And now I'm scared as shit, because once that happens, you go through this myriad of emotions. The first one is absolute freaking, it's not terror, but it's a fear that you've never had before, because the welfare of your family is at stake now, because you don't have that income coming in. And then it goes from that like trepidation of what am I going to do now, into almost despair, and then into anger, and then into focus. So, you utilize that anger, like Customato said to Tyson once, fear is like fire. It could cook your food. It could burn your house down, or it could keep you warm and cook your food. So you have to manage that anger. And I did, and I generated T-Max, my corporation, still to this day.
Sure.
And that was in 2010. And I took off pretty well with that. A lot of ebbs and flows when you're in business for yourself and by yourself, with nobody covering your 6. Nobody's watching your ass. It's all about you at this point.
How hard was that? Did you ever, did you ever get to a point where you were financially insecure or unstable, or go through a period where you thought you might go bankrupt, or the business might go under, anything like that?
Yeah. So 2013 was my best. It was my worst year and my best year. I went through a long, just a bad marriage. The last 5 years of it were horrible. But I wanted to stay close to my kitty, so I lived in the bonus room above my garage, just a little teeny freaking tiny,
just next
room.
Next to your wife at the time, who was living in the house.
She was living in the house. That way I could.
Do you think you were just too different, or what? Why do you think the marriage broke down?
Oh, it was that was on her drugs, alcohol.
Right. Okay.
But it's not you can't call it a drug addict or a drug problem, because it was prescription meds. So it's legal.
Right.
So it's okay. Yeah.
All pain meds and stuff like that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she just started losing connections between the neuroreceptors, you know, and it just became real bad. I mean, it was, you know, she was delusional paranoid.
Okay.
And there was all she just lived in darkness, which drove me there too. So I just want to stay close.
That's a heavy thing, man. And
yeah,
for any, you know, that's
real bad. Yeah.
For anybody that's been there, that's the perfect way to describe it. Just darkness.
I ended up going into deep, dark depression, you know, and was hitting rock bottom. I mean, I was day drinking like all day long. I mean, I still drink now. I'm not one of those guys who says quit drinking, but
but you know when to drink and when to put it down.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So in my divorce finalized or separation in 2013. Right. So I moved out right down the road and got a small condo just right down the road, 400 meters away. That's how far it was.
Right.
So I could stay close to the kiddies. And, but that, talk about, so I had to assume all of her debt. And I had no idea the amount of debt she had. It was astronomical. Plus I was already in some debt. So it was roughly about 80 grand, you know, USD. And, and I'm on the road doing training courses under T-Max. 2013 hits and Obama administration, in comes this monster called sequestration. So what that was is the government cut all funding to federal law enforcement, military on training and travel, which meant my calendar was full at the beginning of 2013. The light switch went off.
Right.
Boom. So I've got $80,000 in debt. I'm paying child support and alimony, and now I have no work again.
Oh man.
Eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
So that was the first time.
And were you still drinking all the time at this point?
I was out. I was out of the house. So yes,
as soon as you got out of the house,
that
you
night,
got better.
having a couple pints. So now I'm away from that, you know, and I'm slipping out.
As soon as you got out of the house, did you immediately start feeling better and get out of that darkness?
I immediately started feeling better. It happened a little bit prior to that. There was a moment in time where I call it put a rubber band around your neck and snap the fuck out of it.
Right.
And it was just before I moved out. I am in my bonus room, and it was at night, and I'm shit faced. You know, it was about 9 at night, and my son is up there with me. My sweet boy was up there, and we're watching stupid TV like The Simpsons or something.
Yeah.
And on a little teeny TV, and it's dark, and I have one incandescent light that's kind of warming up the room, so it's got that yellowish hue, you know, in there. It's real dark, but just that little bit of yellowish glow in the room. And my kid's in his pajamas. He's leaning against me. And there's a little window, you know, it's a bonus room. So you imagine a tiny window, and it's opened to the outdoors, and the outdoors is black. I've told this story before, and I always get goosebumps about it, but this is kind of a defining moment. I've had many second chances in life, but this was one of them too that I will never forget because it was magical. He's leaning against me, watching the TV, and I see something move, and I look to the window, and a screech owl about this big lands right on the windowsill. It's beautiful, and that little incandescent light is like lighting it up, you know, and behind it is black, you know, the outdoors is black. And I nudge him. I said, James, real slowly look at the window. And he turns and looks, and the owl's just standing there looking at us, you know, right on the window edge. And I look at him, and he looks at me, and his eyes are all big, you know, full of wonder.
Yeah.
It was just amazed, you know, at this thing. And it takes off, and we're talking about it. And I realize at that moment, I'm like, dude, man, this kid's, you know, he's depending on me. Him and his sister, they are depending on me. And I'm a freaking mess. You know, I am almost capitulating to darkness at this point. So I put him to bed, and I go up and I do some soul searching, you know, in that bonus room. And I remember saying, you know what, fuck, All right. I didn't have a plan. My plan was put my running shoes out, get my freaking iPod with my metal mix on it and some running shorts and set an alarm clock.
Yeah.
And the next day was Sunday. And I started going for a run. I had no plan with it. Man, I ran. I jogged. It was like a Forrest Gump moment, you know?
Yeah.
It was one of those.
That's what I was picturing, yeah.
But it wasn't, years. It was an hour and a half. And for me, that's a long run. But talk about clearing your head,
Yeah.
Because I'm not I don't pound pavement. I'm not a jogger, But that day, it was like an hour and a half.
Just cleansed you.
Oh man, yeah. And when I got back to the home, I did not want to go inside. And I worked out in my driveway for like another hour. And I remember screaming, I just felt good. I remembered who I was.
Exercising the demons, man.
Dude, I remembered,
Yeah.
It's like I have that term, keep the blaze alive. It's like I still had that ember. And all I had to do is nurture it, make a little flame. And once I had that flame going, just put some more wood on it, just put a little more tinder on it and get it blazing. And from that point on, it was like a massive awakening. It was like rebirth. And everything happened all in sequential order. It was like the next day, a police officer came to my house, and which they came there all the time because my wife would call him because I was doing whatever. My wife at the time,
in her head.
She was batshit lunatic crazy.
Yeah.
And the cops came and said, "Hey, we found your wife is in the village and she's under the influence."
Yeah.
And I went, "Yeah, okay," and I just kind of brushed it off because I was all alone. I was all alone. Nobody knew what I was going through. Nobody. I didn't share it with anybody.
You didn't confide in anyone.
But the cops.
Is that just your personality? Like you just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to burden anybody else with that bullshit.
Yeah, of course, man.
Plus, I really didn't even understand the extent of the problem that I was having at the time. And the cops. This one cop. His name was Tom. Tom looked at me. He's got these big like puppy dog eyes, and he goes, "You need to get the fuck out of here." I said, "What?" He said, "Dude, the kids will understand. Kids are resilient. For your own good, for their good, you need to get the fuck out of here." And I broke down, bro. I mean, I had a meltdown because I didn't know anybody knew. I was all alone, and I didn't know the extent of the problem either.
Yeah.
So that day, I did what he said. That day, I loaded up my pickup truck with whatever I could carry and found a condo. It's
mad how, like, it was literally just. Did you say it was that day or the day after you had that awakening where almost like that fire, as you said, was rekindled, that the phoenix rose from the ashes, so to speak, with like rekindling like the fury, but in a positive way. Having that epiphany, and then suddenly in almost like the completely opposite way with more your emotions, like realizing the gravity of the situation in that way and actually breaking down in much more of like an emotional, like sad way, but still in that sort of cleansing way, in a matter of a couple of days or whatever.
Yeah, the timing was perfect.
Yeah.
Remembering who I was, getting encouragement from an unsolicited source.
Yeah.
The police officer, he was a career cop. He was an older guy, and he's seen a bunch of bad shit.
Yeah.
And man, when I moved out, talk about focus. I just got laser focused at that point, and I just wanted to take over the world. Yeah. So and then like I said, working for yourself, it's ups and downs, it's ebbs and flows, it's on off switch. You're stressing constantly, but that stress was good. I needed that.
Yeah,
I needed that level of stress and to give me that focus, to fuel my fire.
When things like sorry, Pat, I was just going to say, with like everything that happened, whenever you hear stories like that, it sort of makes you think, it seems like it was all fate. Like, do you believe in fate? Do you think that there is like something going on there, or like what are your
I believe
mindset?
In energy and positive vibes, and not so much karma, but fate, absolutely. Yeah. And and that we make our own luck. You know,
Yeah.
we have to be, you know, our own ship's captain, you know, and steer that boat to the best of our ability. Because a lot of people, they're all about, you know, make shit happen, make shit happen, make shit happen. Go out and get it. Go out and get it. You do that to a certain point, and then once that happens, now you have to look for you have to listen and be cognizant of opportunity. Because I was snatching up every opportunity possible. I wasn't saying no to anybody at that point, which now I can, though.
Yeah.
And I could say, nah, I'm not going to do that. Nah, I'm just.
You can afford to. Yeah.
Right. Well, it's by choice too. It's like I mean, because you work your ass off for decades, and then you get to that point, freedom through discipline, where you could say, man, yeah, I'm going to pull back on the reins. I'm going to take a pay cut, and I'm not going to freaking work my ass off anymore.
Yeah.
And that's where I am now. But it was a long, freaking arduous road, you know, to get to the point where I'm at now. But so much fun too. So much fun. And I don't regret any of it. And then also 13. So back to 2013, my worst year, my best year. So it was my worst year finalizing divorce, mountains of debt, off on my own, working my ass off, sequestration. Later in that year, in September, that's when I met my current wife. Everything changed. You know, the dynamics of my life, the atmosphere, the just all of it changed for the better. I had just this new confidence that I hadn't felt in decades, you know, just oozing with confidence now. And because this gal, Rebecca, my wife, she turned out being not only a cheerleader, but a great confidant, you know, somebody I can confide in. And I know she's not going to drink the Kool-Aid and blow smoke up my ass.
Yeah,
you
sure.
know, she's
how
the responsible adult in my life.
Yeah, sure.
I run shit by her all the time, and I still do, you know.
Yeah. So, where did you meet? Where did you meet Rebecca?
Well, we both met. It was a couple years before I got divorced. We were both in relationships, and her boyfriend just took a course of mine, a rifle course.
Right.
I had to go to Rebecca's place of work, a hair salon, to pick up my my drunk wife, and it was like 11 in the morning, and I'm in there, and Rebecca said, "Oh yeah, she'll be right out," and she initiates the conversation. My boyfriend took a course from you, and he loved it. He raved on about it, and we just started chit chat, just idle chit chat, real harmless.
I bet he doesn't rave about it now.
Right. Yeah. And then it was in 2013, right at the beginning of September, I was at my local pub, and she came up and she said, "Hey, do you remember me?" In my head, I was saying, "Hell yeah, I remember you."
Yeah.
That's not what I said. I said, "Oh, sure, yeah, you were Rebecca. Yep, I met you here and there." And we started talking, and come to find out, she had moved away with this boyfriend. He turned out to be a piece of shit. Not a piece of shit, just a bad boyfriend.
Sure.
Just a bad boyfriend. And I told her that I was separated. So that's when I started the wooing process, you know, the courting. I was very careful.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, very careful. So yeah, we've been as thick as thieves ever since.
Yeah. Did you know really from the start that like she was like the one for you?
There was something, you know.
Yeah.
Her demeanor, you know, cool, but poised, cool, and confident. I just loved it. Yeah. That demeanor, you know, cool and confident. That was the first compliment I ever gave her. Yeah. I says, you know, what I really like about you is cool. You've got poise and confidence. But yeah, so I knew there was something I wanted so bad to hang on to that, but I wanted to be careful. I didn't want it. I was baby steps, you know.
Sure.
So we'd share a pint at the pub every once in a while, and
could you naturally talk to her? Did you find that you could just naturally talk with each other?
Oh yeah,
about anything?
Very easily. Yep.
That connection.
And then realized also bonus. Oh shit, this chick is smart.
Right.
To me, that's a turn on. It's a big turn on.
100%.
She calls me a what is that? The term? I think it's sapiosexual. Where you're sexually attracted to smart people.
Right. You're right. Yeah.
Especially
like
chicks.
You want a formidable woman mentally.
Right. I mean, it's so freaking hot. Having a gal who's good looking but freaking smart as shit. Oh man,
I completely agree, man. Yeah.
To me, that's just hot. That is sexy.
Because it makes it's a rare lady as well,
Right.
Because there's a lot of good looking.
Makes a rare
girls.
freaking human,
Yeah.
Because you equate, good looking, well, you're probably a dumbass.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, as you said, but how many good looking girl models are there out there? But it's doesn't necessarily mean
right.
They're it's not wife material,
Right. Right. Yeah, not somebody you want to hang out with.
Yeah.
And to this day, I sit at the pub. And I'll sip on a pint, and she'll say, "Do you know where this term came from?" I go, "No." She goes, "Have I told you this story before?" I go, "Maybe, but tell it again, because it's going to take me 4 times to sink in."
Yeah,
Because she's just got a great knowledge base, a very well-rounded knowledge base of stuff. So I just sit and listen, and I'm all about it. I mean, we have different knowledge bases, but I don't want to tell her about, the net explosive weight of a certain explosive, and the muzzle velocity of a certain round. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And the tactics behind close quarter battle.
Sure.
So I just sit and listen.
What sort of stuff is she into? What's her passions in life?
She is a whiz, an absolute whiz on history, and I'm talking deep history, ancient history.
What's her favorite areas?
Probably Egypt, but Roman, Greek history. I mean, just a wealth of knowledge, and then mythology.
Very interesting.
I never thought I'd be into mythology, Greek mythology, but her knowledge base there, she could go on and on. She knows more in that than any person I've ever met.
Right.
So extensive knowledge base on all that stuff, but ancient history and prehistory. So before written history.
Really ancient. Yeah.
She just got back from a summit. She went down to a summit for 3 days, the Cosmic Summit, where it was all about the Younger Dryas area, the last ice age and the cataclysmic events and the prehistory. And I could just sit and listen. I mean, I have gained a massive interest in that too, just because it is interesting. And I think it's good to be interesting. If you are interested in stuff, you become interesting, so I never stop learning or listening to people,
I always think about it's that curiosity, stay curious. The more curious you are, and it's if you're around a child, even some adults might find it annoying, but if you're around a kid and they're just constantly asking questions, "Dad, why does this happen? Dad, why do you need that? Dad," or whoever they're with, and you think that's good because that's an insatiable hunger for knowledge. And what are they going to be like when they're 20? What are they going to be like when they're 30? What are they going to be like when they're 40? Whereas it's the people that don't care. Fair enough. Look, if you don't care, if you don't need to know why something works, if you don't want to know how our civilization got here, fair enough. But there's no need to know anything. There's no need to improve. There's not that little curiosity there where you need to know. I need to, as soon as something comes in my head, right? Okay, now I need to research this and find out all about it. You need that. You need that to get really good at something or to become really smart,
Yep. You really do. And it's right. It's so funny you brought that up. I've always got irons in the fire, but one of the things I'm building right now, and I'll disclose it here. This is the first time I'm disclosing it.
Oh, exclusive.
Open forum. I'm going to start a kids show.
No way. Yeah, I think that'd be amazing, man.
A YouTube-based kids show. So I've already filmed 5 small pilots, and they're short. Awesome. They're between 5 and 10 minutes, and it's very Mr. Rogers-esque. Do you remember the Mr. Rogers show?
It rings a bell. All
right. Anyway, it was an American kids show in the 60s and 70s. I think he even went into the 80s. But just a lovely, gentle man, who talked to the kids in this very calming, loving way. So I'm going to be like the cool version of Mr. Rogers.
Nice.
See, Mr. Rogers came inside every day on a show. He started every show the same way. You know what? I'm not going to disclose how I'm going to start it because there's a lot of copycatters out there.
Yeah, no. So
You wanna there's a lot of freaking echoes out there, man, with with lack of creativity.
Yeah,
so,
man.
But I'm going to start a kids show.
Is it going to be like basically bringing that Pat Mac message, but to a younger audience, though? The same sort of general stuff.
Yep. But the term you used earlier, that's going to be the main theme is curiosity.
Right.
Exploration, curiosity.
Man,
where it's cool to be curious.
I'll make sure I let my kid watch it, man. I'll be putting it on for my kid.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that because, the sad thing is nowadays a lot of parents will, I call it lazy parenting, just plop a device in front of a kid.
Yep.
Kid needs to be bored, man. A child needs to be bored. He needs to be engaged. Mm-hmm. And he needs to be encouraged to be curious, just like you said, with all the questions. Mm-hmm. So with boredom comes curiosity and the ability to, exercise the creative lobe of the brain, to explore. And
it makes you like intuitive as well.
Right.
Like if you're bored, well, how are you going to make yourself not bored? That,
Right.
It's on you. The emphasis is on you to sort that out right now,
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and a lot of kids are being robbed of that now. They're being robbed of it with all the devices, and it pains me to watch a family, even like at a restaurant, a family of 4, mother, father, 2 little kids, and the father's carrying 2 electric screens with him, so we could plop it in front of the kids during dinner.
Yeah.
Or wherever they are, just always a device in front of the kid. They're not when they're driving in the car. They're not looking out the window. Yeah. I want them to watch birds. I want them to be interested in bugs. Yeah. To look in all directions. To be omnicognizant, not myopic. What is right in front of me versus what is around me. What is in my world, and kids cannot be freaking robbed of that, man.
Yeah.
But we are, and we're
situational awareness. Yeah.
Yep. Situational awareness, bingo. Yep.
Yeah.
All of it. So that's my next venture, and I'm adamant about it, man. Because the thing is, we all identify problems. Mm-hmm. We could see them. We make fun of like millennials or Gen Zers. With the Gen Zers, that's my fault. That's my generation's fault. I did that.
Yeah.
It's not their fault. But how could instead of pissing and moaning about it, am I part of the problem or part of the solution?
Sure.
So I want to be part of the solution. So, for instance, basic dude stuff, that's part of the solution instead of being part of the problem.
Man, I love it. I'm an avid follower of the Tenants, man. I look forward to every single little, because they sort of, the way you do them as well, they're sort of like a bit funny. Do you know what I mean? Like there's something funny about it, but at the same time, it's like real world application. Yep. It's stuff that every man and woman like should know, or like at least it helps. It will help your life out easier. The more you need to know, the less you are reliant on other individuals in the world. You used the word freedom earlier on. Give yourself freedom in life.
Yep. So with the and the basic dude stuff isn't necessarily about teaching people stuff. It's about being curious. You can't. You don't know how to do this thing? Freaking look it up, man. Go to University of YouTube for 5 minutes.
Man,
learn how to fix your learn how to freaking fix the float on your lawnmower's carburetor. I mean, it's all there. Information's at your fingertips.
Yeah, there's been stuff that you've done on all of your, the countless basic dude stuff, little videos you've put out. Because you put them out, I mean, like a couple times a week, don't you? Or at least once a week.
Once a week. Basic dude stuff Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, the amount
every Wednesday since the winter of 2019.
Yeah, so I've watched hundreds. All right, I've watched hundreds of them, and there's been things that I've looked at where I was like, just sparked enough for me to think, okay, that doesn't look too hard. Actually, I think sometimes a lot of the reasons why people get paralyzed is because they think something's way harder than it is in reality.
Of course,
you look at that looks. I've seen the bare bones of that now. Let me go and research it. As you said, the good thing about modern era. We were saying talking about the bad things about kids being glued to their like tablets or phones, whatever, but. You can look up anything. You can find up anything, instructionals by experts on YouTube or anything. Like, use that as a benefit,
Yeah. People are afraid to get out of their own way.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, they can't. It's just a good thing to be curious, to learn. There's so much to know. There's so much, and people ask all the time, "How do you know all this stuff?" I'm curious.
Yeah. So literally,
I just by nature.
I imagine like you learned a lot of like, obviously because you put up a lot of like like knots and like
Right.
stuff like that, which I imagine you learned a lot of that in the military. But
Yep.
I was going to ask you, so a lot of the things that you do know that you put up on your basic do stuff, that's just curiosity, you tinkering with stuff, learning stuff, reading books.
Yeah, man. I mean, like the gardening thing. I'm an avid gardener.
Yeah.
I didn't learn any of that crap in the military.
Yeah,
or
sure.
about, like edible plants and medicinal flowers. And,
Sure.
none of that was, I learned that, just over time.
When
Just
did you
a
start
little
gardening?
Well, even as a kid, I would turn over gardens, for neighbors. And I've always loved it. But ever since, basically ever since I retired, I started getting into it more and more. And then the whole like prepper type of mindset, that kind of thing. But probably in the past 10 years is when it's really blossomed for me.
Yeah. Man, you got a beautiful garden.
As soon as I get off of this, that's where I'm going, in my backyard.
You put up
I
a video.
have so much freaking to mend and to harvest and to can and to flash freeze and earth to turn. And I have to, I'm making biochar, which is just adding carbon to my compost. There's always stuff to do when you're a gardener, which, by the way, is great freaking therapy, for like people, for instance, when they get, let's say they had a long military career. And they lose connection from themselves and they lose sense of purpose and meaning. Dude, if you grow a garden, you have a reason to freaking wake up every day.
Yeah.
Because that garden's counting on you. You've got to till the earth. You've got to pinch the flowers. You've got to mend the plants, So that garden will give you purpose and meaning. Yeah. And the bigger the garden is, the more work it is too, because it needs you. You can't let that garden die. You gotta be there for it.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I was really excited to talk to you today, because I say we share so many interests, and there's so much similar things about our personalities. Whether it's like the music, the gardening, like the working out, stuff like that. But yeah, it's funny because you pretty much answered some of my questions already. But I was going to say about like the gardening stuff because like I love gardening too. It's so therapeutic for me. Like just makes me feel so relaxed and content. Just like spending time with my garden, as you said, like nurturing that, like tending to all of that, and knowing that that is your responsibility. Mm-hmm. There is something so relaxing about that, amazing. And just like growing as well. But I mean, I was showing my missus the other day because you put up a video not that long ago, and you were showing all your different stuff and the amount of things you're growing in your garden. Like at the moment, we're growing like a handful of things. We've got some lettuce, broccoli, sweet potato. We've got some carrots, some spinach.
Nice.
That might be it. That's just the things that we're growing. But then, on your video, the amount of things. Oh, we've got some black currants. We've got some black currants as well, and some strawberries. But the amount of things in your video, I was like, man, I need to level up.
Well, and the thing, but that comes over time, right? So I started with just maybe one raised bed, and then it turns into two. Now I have 16, and I even,
that's a lot of tending, man.
Yeah, it just grows and grows and grows. I'm even going to plant. I have like an easement just over the fence of mine that's nobody owns the land really. The city owns it. I'm going to start growing in there today. That's where I'm growing. I'm going to put in a new batch of sweet potatoes in there because it's land that's not being used.
Yeah. I saw the other day you were putting like a load of like carrots and onions and stuff in jars. And it's funny because I was going to ask you how much of a prepper you are, but it very much looked like you were doing some hardcore prepping.
Oh, yeah. I'm into it. My goal is to be as self-sufficient as possible, because anything, especially here in the United States, I'm almost scared to talk about this because of, censorship and all that, but we have no problem poisoning our people here. All the food we consume is poison. It's all got poison in it. Produce. That's got poison. They're spraying it with they're bombarding it with everything, even in the grocery store. Our meat's got poison in it. And then people live off of processed freaking crap from fast food restaurants. A burger will have 250 freaking ingredients in it. A burger, bro.
Yeah.
And some of those are petroleum based.
Yeah.
So I want to be as self-sufficient as possible. I like to. We source our meat locally. Yep, source our meat locally, and then any veg I'm getting from my garden.
Yeah, man.
So
that's
I
amazing.
am eating legitimate food.
Yeah, that's the dream, man. And I think we do have a similar problem over here, but it's to a lesser extent.
Right.
I'm into my nutrition, so I do look into it a lot, and I know that the quality of the meat in America, I've heard, wouldn't pass the inspection checks of the meat that I say buy over here in the UK. I'm saying that there's like, I think especially with say like poultry, with chicken, like we've got some issues like buying chicken say in the UK because the chickens
everybody
are kept,
does. These
massive factory farming. The chickens are all kept huddled together, and a lot of the time they're like really mistreated and stuff like that. But I have heard that, and like other things as well. Like apparently, did you know this? Apparently, Hershey's wouldn't be allowed to be sold as a chocolate in the UK because it hasn't got high enough chocolate in the bar to pass as a chocolate. So if it was sold in the UK, it would have to be marketed as like a veggie, like some weird like veggie oil product or like something sweet. Weird. Right. Yeah, it was like really weird. It's like more sugar than it is chocolate, and it's got loads of other oils in, but it wouldn't be able to pass as a chocolate in the UK.
Nah,
I thought that was really interesting.
I think it's only like at 30 or 40%.
Yeah.
Something like that, as far as chocolate goes, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was really.
By the way, I love chocolate, man, but I do that like that bitter as hell 90%.
Dark chocolate. Man, I'm exactly the same. I like dark, bitter chocolate, man. Like,
right, those little teeny chunks where it's like almost painful to eat, but it still tastes like chocolate. It's like, oh my god, this is so bitter.
100%, man. On the sort of subject of nutrition and stuff. Obviously, one thing that you're known for, one thing that I love watching on your Insta is obviously all your workout videos and stuff, and it's amazing how many like songs you put up, like accompanying those videos that are also in my sort of gym playlist as well. Like there's a lot of cool stuff, a lot of like the Pantera, like Megadeth, like so much stuff, like Throwdown, I think you put up the other day, like this Continuum, that's a banging song, man.
I've got a playlist, Metal Mac Attack Spotify playlist. Metal Mac Attack. I built that during Coronacation.
Did you?
Yeah.
Nice, man. Nice. But I was gonna ask you, like, obviously diet and training goes hand in hand. I'll ask you a bit about your training in a minute if that's all right. But I was gonna say, like, how important to your like like your training is your diet? Like, how much do you like cater your diet to your training? And what does like a sort of like a typical day or like week of eating look like for you?
So I don't follow any diet. I don't weigh it. I don't count calories. I don't have a specific number of meals I'm going to eat in the day. I'm an opportunist, but I eat food, right? So I have this thing about food, and I think the first time I mentioned it on like an open forum was on the Rogan podcast, where I said, if it comes in a bag or a box, it's not food. It is a product. It's got a list of ingredients, so it's not food. Now, granted, a lot of that shit's yummy, and do I cheat every once in a while? Hell yeah, I cheat every once in a while, but it's very rare. Food, when you're shopping, food is meat and veg, and and everything in between, the legumes and whatever else, right? So it doesn't have any excessive ingredients. In a grocery store, if that's where you buy stuff from, just shop at the periphery of the grocery store, minus the bakery aisle. Not saying that, that all bread is bad for you, but the whiter the bread, the sooner you're dead, especially if you're getting it from a grocery store.
Sure.
Because it's just processed crap. So at the periphery of the grocery store, you got your dairy, you got your produce, and you got your meat. That's all you need. What do you go into the guts for? Coffee, olive oil, spices. Anything else in food product or stuff that you can consume is poison in the guts of a grocery store. So just stay at the periphery. I source my meat locally, local farmed, and then we grow our veg, and we grow all year long. We have that ability here. North Carolina winters are winters. We'll get ice and snow, but nothing extensive. But there's hardy veg that grows all year long. I mean, cabbages and collard greens and broccoli, all that stuff grows in the freaking snow. It'll sustain all the way through the winter, and then you could harvest it first thing in the spring.
Yeah.
And then you can freeze, store as much of that as you can. So that way now your spring garden is starting. And then I'm already on my second spring garden. or my second summer garden, where we've grown to the extent that which we could grow. The plants have exhausted themselves. They get pulled up and we start anew. Yeah. Now, as far as like, I haven't eaten yet today. It's 10:14. I don't know when I'm going to eat. Sometimes I eat breakfast. Sometimes I don't. I'm an opportunist. Sure. I want to make sure. Yes, right.
Yeah.
But it's going to be very. I mean, I have a steak downstairs pulled out of the fridge. It's in warm water, so I could cook it at room temp. That's what I'm going to eat the first thing right off the bat.
Nice, man. Yeah.
And just during the day, I'll have stuff in mind. See, the thing is, too, you have to. For us first worlders, we have an abundance of everything, right? Mm-hmm. So you don't want your pantry filled with freaking crap, because then you become an opportunist and you're grabbing crap. You become a human garbage can. Mm-hmm. So the only thing I could grab is meat and veg, as far as like get it and go, or like black beans and rice. Yeah. And I will do that. I don't, whatever it is. But how many times a day? Man, people ask the question all the time, what's your diet like? I just eat food, bro. I don't measure. I don't count.
Do you at least?
But I am predominantly carnivore. I eat meat most of the time, meat and fish too. But I love veg, so I'm going to eat veg. I'm not just going to go carnivore. I love green beans, man. Yeah. Give me that pile of green beans. Give me that squash. Give me those peppers.
I don't know about you, but I found with myself, I know this is circumstantial rather than direct evidence, but for myself, I think the times I've been in the best shape in my life, which also probably correspond with the times I've been most impressive in terms of the things I can physically do, have been the times where I have just been eating like 90% just like meat and veg,
Right.
It's just like steak and lots of like steak, like chicken, eggs, fish, and like broccoli, asparagus, tomatoes, berries, a lot of like blackberries, blueberries, raspberries, but those sort of core foods, lots of salad.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, we literally are what we eat. And if you're a human garbage can, you're just going to become garbage. Yeah. And there comes a point, and that goes for everything that we consume, the meds, that we consume, the prescription. So one of the things I've been researching a lot is, and I don't know it, so don't ask me too much on this. Sure. Because I'm learning our natural remedies, Okay. So yesterday, for example, I made sassafras tea. And
what is that?
I stored it. Well, it's a plant that grows here, and as I'm researching it, the first settlers here, it's debatable that sassafras tree could have been the number one or the first cash crop here in the United States, other than, or not in the Americas, other than tobacco. So before United States, way when it was the Americas. But sassafras is just one of many plants out there that can act as natural remedies against aches and pains and fatigue and cramping, anxiety. There's so many. Mother Nature has everything to heal us in plant form. Everything. Everything that comes in a prescription med bottle, that
comes from the ground.
Right. 100%. Yeah, we could get it. We could get it from the earth.
Yeah.
So that's my new thing. I've been trying to research.
So did you say you've been growing it? Have you started growing it? Did you say?
No, it just grows.
Right.
Yeah, the sassafras just grows. So I pulled some up. I have some on my property that became a nuisance. Nice. So yesterday I pulled it up and I chopped the roots off, put it into a boil, made tea with it, and I started sipping it just to kind of see if there's an adverse effect.
Does it taste any good?
It's where root beer comes from. It's the root that makes root beer, the flavor of root beer.
That's all right then. That's all right then.
Yep.
It tastes all right.
So yesterday my wife came home and she shut the door and she went, "I smell root beer." Yeah, because the whole house smelled like root beer.
Nice.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, just bore you because you say everyone asks you it all the time. At least, say with your nutrition, do you at least try and think okay, I'm gonna try and get at least roughly because I know you said you don't count anything, but do you at least roughly think like, okay, I want to make sure I get my healthy fats in, some good carb sources, and some good like protein every day? So you do obviously make sure you're hitting certain things
absolutely.
roughly.
I can't just eat lean meat. I mean, that stuff just goes through you. It doesn't. There's no sustainment there. So I'm big on the healthy
testosterone
fats.
levels and everything.
Yeah. I harvest all my bacon fat, and I'm careful about that. So I cook with bacon fat and real butter, just good, locally sourced butter. I eat the hell out of butter, bacon fat, just all the good fats.
Have you ever cooked in goose fat? Goose fat's really nice.
Yeah, I don't have any of that. Yep.
Yeah. I say it's a really good thing. You can get it really readily available in the UK. Just like 100% goose fat. There's nothing else in it.
I saw it yesterday in my hardware store. I saw that just yesterday in my hardware store. They have a cooler, and I saw a container of goose fat, and I went, huh.
Apparently, as well, like goose and duck fat, people look at it, and because it's like very, very high levels of fat, people think like, oh no, that must be really bad. But apparently, the fat in goose and duck is actually good for your heart. I can't remember all the exact reasons why, but yeah. And I'll tell you what, if you say like cook some eggs like in a frying pan with goose fat, it's like the most delicious eggs you've ever had.
All right,
delicious.
Well, I'm writing that down. I'm going to get that goose fat today. 'Cause I gotta try. I was on the fence yesterday. Goose fat. I wrote that down because I was on the fence. I saw it in the cooler in my hardware store.
Yeah.
So yep, that's a purchase because I have to go there this morning anyway. So
yeah, sorry, go on.
No, but so yes, I'm careful about protein intake. I want to make sure, and I just listen to my body.
Yeah,
I know I'm getting the appropriate amount of grams of protein into me, and I'll take a powder supplement too, just in case. Usually in the morning, I take my greens and a powder supplement, of like mushroom protein, that kind of thing. Because I want that lion's mane in me and those kind of supplements.
Is it like a blend? It's got like different stuff, like it's got some whey in, got some mushrooms in, like got some casein or whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing. I think at the end of the day, I think stuff like that, I think it's a no-brainer. I think if you work out as much as you do, it's just you need to be covering your bases, don't you? As you said earlier on, you want to make sure that you are like not getting injuries, and you're probably going to get an injury for either because you're under recovered, overtrained. Obviously, there's some overlap there, but under recovered, diet and sleep. So you need to make sure if protein's the thing that's recovering you need to make sure you're getting enough in.
And the other thing is, you're not nearly as old as I am, but I'm going to use you as an example. The other thing about injury prevention is the older you get, the longer your warm up is. Don't blow that hammy, man. You got to get that good 15, 20-minute warm up, and you got to start slow and. Yeah,
that's how I think I blew it. I think
that's how most people blow a hammy. You just. I think about that all the time because I started doing sprints again recently.
Yeah,
and I'll have probably 10 really slow warm up sprints with static stretching in between before I go balls to the walls.
Yeah, I think it was one of those things that didn't warm up enough. It was like for this time of year, it was a pretty cold day last Friday. And I was outside in like little shorts and stuff. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's painful for me now more mentally than physically, but there's no point crying over spilt milk at this point. I just need to get on my recovery. I've been doing, the RICE principle, rest, ice, compression, elevation. I'm going for my evaluation tomorrow, see how bad it is. I just got to get back to myself, get back to 100% as soon as possible. But yeah, I was just saying, man, you need get that warm-ups in, getting that good food in. With your workouts, obviously, I think your workouts are freaking awesome, man. And I have to say, I always train pretty similar to you anyway. So what I mean by that is I've always been a big proponent of like full body workouts and like function over aesthetics. But obviously the aesthetics are a nice side effect, but I always think I grew up a lot of military in my family, a lot of rugby players in my family, like boxers. And I grew up watching a lot of like sport and thinking, there were certain people that I looked up to. I thought like, man, if ever I saw like a guy that was like, like a fairly big guy, not like steroid bodybuilder big, but like a big dude, but he was like super fast and he was like fit and everything. I would instantly be like, man, that's freaking awesome. I want to be like that when I'm older. I want to be like that, and so so I would always try and incorporate, like running, but with like kettlebells, but with lots of push-ups and dips and pull-ups and like, just hitting everything from every single angle. But how did you develop your own workout philosophy? And you said earlier on about you working out in the basement when you were a kid. Like at the time, you said you had some like muscle mags, and I imagine at the time it was more just like traditional bodybuilding, just getting into
it. Of course,
it.
just like everybody.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, initially that's how it starts.
Yeah.
I think it started changing for me when I was in the unit.
Sure.
Because just a lot of obstacle courses. We had a gym, and people worked out in the gym, for pretty muscle, bench press and flies.
Yeah.
But we really mixed it up. A lot of uneven type of movement. A lot of up and over walls, a lot of water can carries and things like that. And I was really into that more than I was in the gym. So even prior to me retiring. And when I did retire, I just started researching it more. I joined a CrossFit gym, but I wasn't doing the CrossFit workouts because I looked at what they were doing and I saw harm in it because there was too much replication of movement. It was too herky-jerky. And then I started writing articles. I got a NASM, National Academy of Sports Medicine, just so people, when they ask, well, what do you know? Who are you writing these articles?
Yeah.
Like, well, I do have a piece of paper that says I'm sort of semi-qualified.
Well, not just that, but I think a guy that was obviously in the Special Forces for 22 years probably knows how to move his body,
Yeah, right, yeah. But I didn't know.
And state champion wrestler.
And a lot of the verbiage, so.
Yeah.
But I got really interested in it, started writing articles, and then generated my own brand of working out called Combat Strength Training. And it grew pretty fast. And the objective, what I told people is when it comes to working out, there's 4 reasons why we should work out. Because I want to motivate people. I want people to be active in a world where people are becoming less and less active, right? You need to know why. So first and foremost is self-preservation, longevity, stronger, longer. The next one is the ability to save your own life. The third one, more importantly, is the ability to save somebody else's life. I couldn't imagine having to shoulder the burden of not being able to save a loved one's life because of poor fitness. Yeah. And the last one is kicking somebody's ass. So if you keep the 4 things in mind, that's pretty good motivation right there.
Hell yeah, man. Yeah.
Why do I want to exercise? Those are the 4 reasons right there. That's it. Aesthetics, that's a byproduct. Damn freaking straight I want to look good, man. I mean, the older I get, the more often I go and look at the mirror and go, oh, thank God.
Yeah,
oh, yeah. It still looks good. Yeah, it still looks good.
Dude, you're in insane shape for a 59-year-old?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the biggest reason is my style of workout.
Yeah.
The intensity. So it doesn't take long. Yeah. It's just intensity. It's only 30 minutes every day.
Is that it? 30? Is that every single day pretty much you work out?
Every day. Yep. Yeah. And even on like weekends and stuff, I'm going to go for a walk or do something,
Yeah, go for a hike.
I'm going to put in the work even on the weekends.
Yeah.
Because the older you get, the fewer breaks you can take.
Yeah. And it takes longer to recover as well. Yeah.
And then the big thing for me is really mixing it up, keeping it interesting because it nourishes the brain.
Yeah.
But too many of us are stuck in a rut, when we work out. We get into a routine, and routine is the playground of a dull mind.
Oh, man.
And when we're working in routine, we get stuck in a world of complacent adaptation. There's no longer progress being made because training has to be comprehensive, systematic, and progressive. We need to see the progression. Unless you're freaking changing shit up, if you're in a routine, you're not going to see progression. You're not going to feel it. So I like to really mix things up. What makes it easier for me too is I break the work week down because it gives you focus. Because you need focus because you hit a certain age and you kind of lose motivation. I mean, I'm not full of piss and vinegar anymore, bro, but I'm disciplined. So I rely on the discipline. I rely on the system. So the work week is broke down into a power day, a strength day, a speed and quickness day, a hypertrophy day, and a skills day. And skills is just shit you suck at. It could be balance or hand and eye coordination or your MMA training or things like that. A lot of the boring shit too you throw in on the skills day.
Sure.
The stuff that is not sexy, that we don't want to do.
Hand-eye
Especially
coordination.
balance. Hand and eye coordination
balance,
and balance, those kind of things. So now you have focus, and back to what I was saying at the beginning, I'm a creator. I have creative mind. I'm artsy fartsy, so I'm able to build different types of workouts, and that's the reason I post them. I want to encourage others. Get out there and move. Here's some crazy ass ideas that you can do at home just by following my freaking Instagram,
Yeah.
And they're easy, they're low tech. I do that shit out in my driveway, 95 freaking degrees, blazing hot, sweating my ass off, or in the winter, 38 degrees and raining. So I don't go to a gym. I don't have a bunch of sexy equipment. It's very Spartan, and that's by design. A lot of manufacturers' equipment ask to send me stuff. And most of the time, I'll look at it and go, nah, it's too high tech for me. I have something here that's a solution to a problem that doesn't exist, because I could do the same thing here with this $10 piece of thing, thing that you could do with your $2,000
machine
device.
Or whatever.
So it's for me, it's fun, and I want to, one of my objectives when I'm working out is I want to recognize voids. What do I suck at? See, we guys are very good at practicing what we are good at.
How many guys have a good bench and all they do is bench? And they've got tiny little weak legs, can't do a pull-up.
But the thing is, years down the road, what happens to them? Muscular imbalances, their legs are getting weak, they're atrophy, and they start getting back injuries and things like that because they're not well balanced.
Yeah.
And the big thing of mine, too, is a lot of transverse plane of motion. So a lot of rotation. Yes, a lot of rotation. Because in my opinion, that's where life-saving and ass-kicking take place.
Yeah.
In the transverse plane of motion. So that's freaking the magic right there. That's it.
100%, man. I think not even in like life or death situations, but like say I don't know, you've been to the freaking gardening store, right? You've been in the gardening center and you've bought like freaking a load of bags of manure or compost or whatever. Say you're unloading that at home, you're lifting that side to side. You're probably putting that into your wheelbarrow to then go and wheel that to round the back. You're not lifting it in this weird static way, like it's just like that or like this, 100%.
Yep. So that's it. That's how it works, man. And I love doing it. And I think about the workout the night before. And sometimes you have to do that, especially when you get older. See, when you're young, you can just go to the gym and throw shit around. You start losing motivation and stuff. I plan it the night before. I think about it. What am I going to do for tomorrow's workout? All right, tomorrow is strength day. I want to incorporate a big fat rope. I want my forearms to ache, that kind of thing. So I'll base the workout around one particular exercise and then build everything else around that. And then the magic happens. Crank up the metal and get some.
Hell yeah, man. I don't know about you as well, but I think one thing that's important to say, and obviously I'm in this camp at the moment as well, is like, if you ever get an injury or something like that, like these things happen to all of us. Like, it doesn't mean you have to stop training like straight away. Like when I got home from sprinting, I was obviously gutted. I knew I'd popped my hamstring, but like the first thing I did was I went and assessed what I could do without pain, without affecting my hamstring.
Right.
I realized that if I did some pull-ups, like not too volatile, not too ballistically, I could do pull-ups. Okay, fine. I tried to do some push-ups, like the planking element of the push-up was affecting my hamstring. So I asked my missus very kindly if she would bring some dumbbells over to my bench, and I did a load of bench press, because I could sort of like rock back gently, boom, like focus on what you can do rather than what you can't do until you've rehabilitated whatever you can't do right now,
Yeah, and don't work through an injury, even if it's not as severe as a blown hammy.
Yeah.
If you have a shoulder and you're like, man, I feel like an impingement in there. I'll just work through it. No. Don't do that. Don't exacerbate that thing, man. Give it a freaking chance. Do something else. If that shoulder's bothering you, do an assload of sissy squats or some lunges. That kind of thing.
If you get a torn rotator cuff or something like that, that's like serious by that point,
Yep.
There's a lot of guys that have got like busted up shoulders because they worked through the pain when they're in their 20s and 30s, and now they can't do anything in their 50s,
Right.
100%, man. I love the way that you describe like creating your workouts as almost like a more creative person rather than a, more of like that, what was it you called it earlier, like a more of a scheduled think or whatever. And
routine.
Yeah, because I mean, again, I'm very similar. So all of my best friends, like all of my closest friend groups, for the most part, have always been like musicians and more creative people. Like, growing up in school, they were always like very sort of like nerdy guys, to be honest. But I gravitated towards them, even though I like played rugby, and I was one of the bigger guys in my year and stuff like that. I always like my core group was always that like nerdy musicians and stuff like that, and goofy guys, to be honest with you. And that's who I felt comfortable with. But that's because I like that creativity. I like flourished in that creative space. My mum was a very, very creative lady. And that's exactly the same way I think about working out as well. And I try and explain it is several ways. Like, I think if you're a creative person, you're going to be creative with everything you do. It's not like there are creative endeavors and endeavors that aren't creative. If you are a creative person, everything you do can be creative. So I love the way that you describe all of that. And I've tried to explain that to some of my friends as well that maybe are more like traditionally creative, but aren't into some maybe stuff that's more seen as like, like knucklehead stuff or whatever you want to describe it as, you know what I'm saying? Like, more like meat and potatoes or whatever. But, but like, I love the way you describe that. Coming on to like the music stuff a little bit, because I know that you, you obviously known for being a big metaler nowadays. Like, have you always been really into your music? Like when you were a kid, did you listen to music a lot when you were a kid? What were you listening to at the time? And, obviously you're known for listening to metal with your Metal Mac Attack playlist?
Yep, Metal Mac Attack.
Yeah. So, like, do you listen to other music in your, like, other genres of music in your downtime? Like, what do you listen to when you're in your car or with your missus,
Yeah, I've always been into music. Always. I remember as a kid, a lot of I was into a lot of the classic rock bands who were popular at the time. I mean, you name it. All the like the whatever it was. It could have been the Allman Brothers, ZZ Top, Deep Purple, Blue Oyster Cult. All of those,
Leonard Skinner.
What's that? Leonard Skinner. All of it. I loved all that stuff.
Yeah.
And you know who I was a big fan of? The Who. The Who was my band when I was an early teen. I mean, I know still to this day every lyric, every song, every album, that kind of stuff. I mean, I was a fan. When I was 13, I bought an album at a yard sale for $0.25, and I still have this album. I bought it in 1979, bought it in 1979, and it was the Black Sabbath Paranoid album.
Nice. Man.
I still have it. It's downstairs. Yeah, it's all raggedy. Amazing. It's nasty. So that was a turning point, in music for me.
Sure.
Then I started getting into, the big British metal scene, the Judas Priest, the Iron Maiden, the Black Sabbath, that kind of stuff. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
In 1984. I was also listening to hair bands, because then the hair bands emerged. So all the LA scene, I was like, oh my God, I love this. I love Rat and Motley Crue.
Yeah, Rat. Yeah, shout out Rat.
So good. Yeah, so good. And then in 1984, it came out in 1983, but I bought it in 1984, Kill 'Em All by Metallica.
Yeah, man.
Oh, man. So
Thrash.
It just kind of morphed,
born.
It just kind of morphed and grew, and now I was so into it. You had to go to music stores and get music magazines. You had to research, It wasn't like, because mainstream radio wasn't playing this stuff.
Yeah.
So you had to do some research. It wasn't like you could just get on your brain slug, your supercomputer that fits in your hand and look up music. But still to this day, what I listen to, I am primarily a metalhead. I still love, though, all of the classics, I mean, like Ian Gillan, Child in Time.
Yeah.
I played that for my son recently because he's big into music. He's going to school for music education and music theory. And I said, you got to check out this voice from the 70s. This is Ian Gillan singing Child in Time. And for those of you who haven't heard that one, man, find that and crank it up. Deep Purple, Child in Time. Wow.
Yeah,
I mean, that is a voice, And
that's
that's before any auto-tune and a lot of
man.
studio magic.
Yeah.
But the other thing, like Van Halen, when that came out, I think it was 1981 the first time I heard Van Halen one, and I was like, "What?
Yeah.
What the hell is this?"
Yeah.
But I can remember every milestone, in music. But when I'm in my car with my wife, we have kind of common ground, just harder rock and roll.
Sure. So she's not quite into quite as much of the extreme metal as you.
Nah.
But there's that in the middle stuff.
She likes a lot of like Lamb of God, for instance. If we're talking metal, she likes Lamb of God. She loves Judas Priest, for instance. She loves it. I mean,
still going strong.
Yeah, right. Still.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Rob Halford's like 74 years old.
Yeah.
He's the coolest gay guy on the planet, man.
Yeah, he certainly is, man. He is, definitely. Yeah. Most down-to-earth guy as well. He gets saw a documentary with him, and he was wearing like Lonsdale is sort of like a boxing brand in the UK, but it's known to be quite like cheap. And there's these shops in the UK called Sports Direct, and to be honest, they're considered like quite like low rent. It's like every like poor kid goes and gets his like local like tracksuit from Sports Direct, and he's like still just kitted out in like a Sports Direct clothes that you probably bought for like a couple of quid down the road. It's like, dude, you're one of the biggest metal frontmans on the planet, but so down to earth. I bet like when he's back in Birmingham, I bet he goes to the same pub that his dad went to when he was a kid, and that it's just. Yeah, legend.
You know it.
Legend.
Yeah, I love those.
Yeah.
I love the whole, the community in metal. The community. I know a lot of people, big names in the metal world, only because mostly just through the interwebs. I mean, they follow me, they follow
cool,
me.
man.
Big metal names, which is cool. Because
I mean, I'm not surprised
it's
though.
an attitude, man. It's a metal attitude that they understand. It's not that I'm cranking metal during workouts. They just love it's a metal attitude that I share with them.
I completely agree, and I think that's with me being a metalhead as well. I think that's one of the little pieces of the puzzle, which is why I've always followed you, looked up to you as a man that's a few decades older than me. Into the same stuff, but more advanced in life, more successful. Like I look at, it's like all those things you said, it's that metal community. You see that there's a kinship almost instantly when you add the other stuff on as well. But I mean, I'm not surprised. I can imagine someone like James Hetfield coming across you and being like, hey, that guy's badass. I can just imagine it, 100% don't tread on me.
It's so freaking great. I love it, man. I am 100% metal head. But like I said, I do love to go back 60s and 70s. I love it, man. Yeah, give me freaking Animals, Pink Floyd album, or the Who, freaking Who's Next, or whatever it is. Did
you ever get into Thin Lizzy?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Man,
Thin Lizzy's great. I mean, what I love about Thin Lizzy is I think that's the one band that has the most. People have done the most covers of that band, especially metal bands.
Yeah.
There's so many people have done Thin Lizzy covers because they just write good songs.
I feel like it's really important for me to spread the Thin Lizzy gospel nowadays, because I feel like a lot of people that say the people who say that Metallica's era, they all looked up to and were inspired by Thin Lizzy, but now in the current crop, I feel like they don't probably get as much recognition as they deserve.
Right.
But I mean, if you listen to, because everyone thinks of, say, like Boys Are Back in Town, obviously,
that's all they know. That's all they know.
Yeah, right. But if you listen to some of their really their real heavy stuff, they've got some pioneering tracks. What's that song like? Is it Stone Cold Sober and Stone Cold Sweat running down the back of my neck, and the guitar solos in it and that, and is it something Thunder? Is it is it called something like? Can't remember it now. Something like heavy.
They do great. Heavy. Their deep tracks are the best ones, and a lot of bands are like that. I'm a Blue Oyster Cult fan, but people know. What do the people know? They know I'm Burning for You and Don't Fear the Reaper. They don't know the Agents and Fortune album,
Yeah.
I mean, or those albums. Those were so good.
Yeah, man.
Oh my God.
Yeah, 100%. All these bands. Yeah, 100%, man, 100%. Yeah. And you play drums and guitar, right?
Yes. Well, I jam.
Yeah.
I could fool people into thinking that I'm good, but I'm not.
But I saw. Did I see a video of you playing with your son?
Yes.
You were playing
Open
drums.
mic night at my local pub. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah, that's
open
ain't.
night.
I mean, man, you convinced me, man. I know some good drummers, man.
Well, the drumming, I have good fundamentals. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rhythm.
I have an internal metronome. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good rhythm.
Yeah.
Hit
No,
some
nothing.
sticks.
I can't. There's nothing flashy about it. Yep.
Sure.
I could play a basic beat all night long.
Is that like with like playing the drums and guitar? Is that something you've got into like since leaving the military? Or?
Yes.
Yeah. Things you
Oh,
picked up?
nope. That was before. Yep.
Right.
That was during the 90s.
Right. So when you'd be like off.
When metal started to suck.
Yeah.
You know, when
Sure.
when grunge appeared.
Yeah. You're not so
I
much
was
of a fan of
pissed
the
off
grunge
at
period.
grunge. I hated it from the onset. I hated it. Bunch
Yeah?
of unmuted power chords and guys whining. And I was so freaking pissed off at grunge.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to be able to do is tell a guy that sucks. And if he said, "Can you do better?" I wanted to say yes.
Right. Fair
So
play.
that motivated me. Yep.
Yeah, awesome,
Drums,
dude.
guitars. Yeah.
Any grunge bands like managed to make their way into your graces over the years?
Well, I don't know if you consider Alice in Chains grunge, but they were same
Yeah.
era. But I love Alice.
Yeah. That. Do you know what? It's so
I
funny
don't
because
think
that's
they're grunge.
yeah. That's the band that I was thinking of when you were saying it, and it's so funny because
I think they get lumped into it.
yeah.
You know,
do,
into
yeah.
the Pearl Jams and all that freaking junk.
Nirvana,
you know, to Nirvanas, and I just hate it. I know a lot of people love it. I freaking hate it.
Well, it's interesting because apparently, I think it was. I can't remember if it was Megadeth or Metallica, but I know that they supported either Megadeth or Metallica on a big, I think, European tour back in the very early 90s. And apparently, if any other grunge band that would be asked to do that, they'd get pelted on stage by the metalheads at the time. Mm-hmm. Alice in Chains were the only one that was accepted by the metal community.
Right.
And I think it's because Jerry Cantrell, the singer/guitarist, you know, he was predominantly more inspired by the metal stuff. And most of his friends, you know, like Alice in Chains are good friends with Metallica and stuff like that. I think Metallica were in the crowd in their in like Alice in Chains Unplugged album. You know, those big MT Unplugged albums that were big in the 90s. Yep. I know they're really good friends, Metallica and Alice in Chains. So yeah, I think that, you know, Jerry Cantrell's got some cool riffs, and they are more on the metal spectrum. You know, they're chuggy.
Absolutely. Right. Chug-a-lug. Yeah, I love that. I love the chug-a-lugging.
Yeah, man. Just to finish off, Pat, say thanks very much for your time today, man. I really appreciate you taking the time. Just favorite beer. What's your favorite beer?
Oh shit! This is a good question. Let me trickle into this a little bit. I love talking booze. I want to go pretty soon too, but I love to talk.
Yeah. Sure.
So I'm a beer snob. The cool thing about the U.S. is 6,000 breweries, so it's a competition, you know. And the U.S. over the past couple decades has done. I mean, we're world known for beer.
Yeah,
you know,
which is mad because you used to be known as a British guy. They used to be known for like Budweiser, Coors.
Right.
Like it was almost like there was a bit. Yeah, like British people almost just like yoke down on Americans for their beer because we like as you said,
soda. Yeah.
We have like thousands of real ales, like millions, you know, porters, everything.
So with 6,000, 7,000 breweries, every brewery's making, you know, like 10 different styles of beer.
Yeah.
So I became an IPA fan, and you can't really point a finger at one, you know, because there's so many good ones. But recently, you know what I've gone back to? Good old fashioned Guinness.
Right. Yeah, it's good beer.
My pub is an Irish pub, and they have a good because there are good Guinnesses, and there are, you know, people don't balance nitrogen, the lines, the temperature, all that stuff. They pour a really good Guinness, and the good thing about it, you know, people would look at it and think it's heavy. It's a light beer, you know, and people don't realize that if I'm drinking this IPA, it's 7.2%.
Yeah,
and 3 pints, I'm like, and it's heavy. But the Guinness is low cal, low alcohol. It's only like 4%, you know. And so I've gone back to that, but as my pub beer. But when it comes to favorite, I'm an IPA guy.
Yeah,
style.
Have you tried many like real ales? Like, have you experimented much with the more like old school British beers? Yep. Have you ever tried one by any chance called Bass? Like BASS, it's just called Bass. Yeah, Bass is delicious. I love Bass. And like Doom Bar. Have you ever tried Doom Bar?
It's good, clean. Yep.
Yeah, man. Doom Bar and
Had
Bass.
plenty of bass ale.
That old school real ale. That's what I'm all about. Yeah, I love it. That's amazing, man. Top 5 favorite artists of all time. If you could only listen to 5
favorite what?
Artists, like bands, artists.
Oh, all time. Well, I guess you have to put the Who in there, right? Since I already said that. That was my teenage years. That was
sure.
And then I have to put Metallica in there because that was the first of the new wave of American metal. They broke Earth. You know what I mean?
Yes, man.
And everybody all over the world took
notice.
What in the hell is this?
I love just sort of on that note. Sorry, before you continue, I love how America and the UK almost like passed the ball back and forth for a couple of decades there. You had like the past. You know, it was almost like every time a British band or an American band would like break waves and come out with new. Well, you mentioned obviously the British wave of heavy metal earlier on, or like with the bands like that came before that, like Sabbath and Judas Priest, and then it would like pass it over to the Americans, and they'd pass it back again. And then Metallica, that thrash scene that came out just after the British wave of heavy metal, just changed the world, changed the landscape.
And of course,
Judas Priest.
Judas Priest, man.
Yeah.
I mean, this is debatable, right? What's the first heavy metal band? A lot of people would say Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
Black Sabbath didn't coin it. They didn't even, Tony Iommi was like, no, we're a hard rock and roll band.
Yeah.
Judas Priest was proud to wear that crown,
Sure.
I mean, they had a song called Dissident Aggressor in the 70s,
Yeah.
So Priest is way up. Let me see. I said the Who?
3.
Metallica. Judas Priest. When it comes to metal also, who I have to throw in? I got to throw Van Halen in there.
Yeah, sure.
Have to. I got a big poster right here that my buddy CJ Ortiz, the Metal Motivator, made me of Eddie Van Halen. Because, those first, 4 out before Sammy Hagar, everything before Sammy Hagar, that was just gold. And then metal bands, I could list so many, but I'm going to have to say Lamb of God.
Yeah, sure.
I just think they could do no wrong. And right now, what I call Lamb of God in the metal world, they're like in my opinion, people will say you're smoking crack in this, but they're like the responsible adults in the room right now because they're not over the hill. Judas Priest, they're Rob's the patriarch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they're hitting the geriatric stage. You know what I'm saying? They're getting
sort of like Mastodon in that same sort of category,
right?
Mastodon, Lamb of God, sort of. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you.
And I like the bands like Megadeth and Metallica. They're not hungry anymore.
No, they're legendary stuff.
Megadeth. Megadeth, I see, would be a close. They would be in that too. I could easily replace one with another.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
my I think Megadeth is my desert island band.
Yeah.
If I were to pick one band and had every one of their albums, because every album it's like a different cast.
Yeah, and like some of it is so aggressive, like Devil's Island, which is like so freaking heavy, especially for when it came out. But then you've got like some real catchy tracks like Euthanasia, Family Tree, like Trust, a bit more like melodic, a bit more like chill, telling a story. Man, amazing band. To me, like a single that will never get old. Like, I'm bored of things like Enter Sandman, and some of the more overplayed singles, but I cannot get bored of Holy Wars.
Oh, right on.
Holy Wars doesn't get boring.
Me off the same album is Tornado of Souls.
Oh, yeah. Oh, just legendary. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, man.
Yeah, 100%. Same album. Yep. I can't get sick of it. But
amazing.
So, there's top 5 with a little wishy-washy in there.
Sure. Have you got like a favorite movie or TV show?
Man, movies, they're all over the map. I mean, I love, it's always a hard one to answer, right? What's your favorite movie? Which means you could watch it a million times and not get sick of it. Like Jeremiah Johnson.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen that, but you've got to see that.
What's it about?
Yeah. It's about so I think it's just past Civil War. So it's as far as in the U.S., I'm pretty sure timeline's just past Civil War. Yukon territory where men are driven to go either mine for gold or trap trap beaver and stuff. So it's based off of a book called Crow Killer.
Right.
The actor, it's a 70s movie, and the actor is Robert Redford.
Okay.
It's one of the coolest man movies you will ever freaking watch. You need to watch it tonight.
Yeah. Would you say Jeremiah Johnson?
Jeremiah Johnson, yeah.
Nice, man.
So without giving up too much of it, he's pretty much a greenhorn war veteran.
Yeah.
And goes up into this Yukon territory to learn how to trap, and he runs into all the problems, trials and tribulations. He has to establish rapport with certain Indian tribes, with other trappers, and then shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to tell you any more than that.
Man, yeah, no, 100.
He becomes a different person.
Man, I'll 100% watch that. Do you know what movie I was thinking about the other day? And I was thinking, we were talking earlier on about balance a bit, like such a well-rounded movie that I don't see how anyone could criticize this movie. I was thinking Last of the Mohicans has got to be one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah,
Last
great.
of the Mohicans.
Yep.
Soundtrack, killer. Storyline, killer. Acting, killer. It's got everything. It's got the violence. It's got the love story. It's just intense. Love it. I love the whole period. That first sort of period where, the Europeans are sort of coming in.
Yep.
You've still got all those American tribes. Amazing movie. Amazing.
Yep. I could even throw, this is one that people, when I say it, they go, really? And then they go, oh, no, you're right. Wizard of Oz.
Right. Yeah. Just a classic. Just a classic movie.
It was so far ahead of their time. Yeah. Technicolor? What is that? Yeah. In 1930, whatever it was.
Evil flying monkeys. What more could you want?
Right. Yeah. Spooky. They made Spooky before people knew what Spooky was.
Yeah, I mean, it's a creepy story.
The first time the freaking Wicked Witch of the West appears, and that plume of red smoke, as a child, that is terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I'm with you. Right, next question is a bit of a deep one. What, if anything, keeps you up at night?
There ain't nothing that keeps me up at night. Nothing worries me.
Yeah?
I don't worry about shit like I was asked this once on a podcast where the hosts were all doom and gloom.
Right.
And they said, what worries you? What are you worried about in the next 5 years? I said, not a fucking thing. My objective is to take care of myself so I can take care of my family, and nobody is going to be able to interfere with that. Nobody. I mean, dude, do I want politics and stuff to go a certain way? Hell yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I'm no ideologue. I don't really, in the grand scheme of things, what are you going to do?
Yeah. You've already got yourself to a good state in life, like a good position with your veg, with your locally sourced meat. You've got a good missus, you've got a good place. Man, I think your answer is the answer that every man should aspire to have. I think that's a beautiful answer, man. Is there a random fact or any random facts about you that is not common knowledge?
Man, I just disclosed one of these once. So I'm writing a book now. No telling when it's going to be finished, but I disclose a lot of that stuff, childhood things, and But let me see what. I'm pretty much out there. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. People know a lot about me because I've done a lot of interviews. There's not a lot. Here's one that I'll speak in open forum. When it comes to alternative medicinals, I smoke weed and I take mushrooms.
Right. I didn't know that. See, I didn't know that. I've been following you, as I said, 6-7 years.
Yep.
Didn't know you smoked weed or took mushrooms.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I had a bad illness for a few years, and it really incapacitated me. So I had to get off prescription meds and try a bunch of alternative things for sleep and things like that, nerve pain and all this. The reason that shit's illegal is because it works. So there you go. Yep.
Yeah, harder to make money out of it as well, but yeah.
Yep, right.
No, that's something we're definitely behind the US in this country about.
Yeah, I'm becoming an advocate. I'm starting to disclose that more and more and not give a shit about what people think because it freaking works, man. That stuff is great medicine. Do
you feel that maybe as like a military man, there's almost like a bit of like stigma, stigma
of course,
with
but
that?
I've been a civilian for a long time now.
Of course.
2 decades, so so screw it.
But I guess it's just that stereotype, isn't it? Like you don't put like special forces and like doing mushrooms like hand in hand, maybe. But yeah, man, that's what it's all about, breaking stereotypes, dude. That's freaking awesome. So like, how often do you partake in that sort of thing?
I microdose. Usually, I'm like a 2 day on, 2 day off type of person.
Right.
And then I smoke weed every night before bed.
Amazing. And you feel like that's had a really good positive impact on your
Absolutely, 100%. Yep. And the thing about weed, I was telling Rebecca one night, I said, if I were ever a marriage counselor and a couple is bickering, I would lock them in a room and say, we're going to smoke this freaking joint. 15 minutes later, they'll be freaking lovey-dovey, making fun of each other, just
things that seemed important.
It's great marriage glue, man. It's great relationship glue.
It's very good at like things that you thought were important suddenly do not seem important anymore.
Right.
Like trivial stuff. Yeah. 100%, man. Well, that's freaking amazing, man. As I said, Pat Mac, you're an inspiration to me. I've been following you for a long time. I think you're a good role model, positive role model for all men, not just in the West, but all around the world. Thank you for being you. You're a freaking awesome guy. And thank you so much for your time today. And thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it, man. It's good. You're a good host, too. You run a good show here.
Oh, thanks very much, man. I appreciate that. And happy 4th of July for tomorrow, brother.
Woo! Thank you, brother. Right on.
Cheers, man. Cheers, everyone. Right. See you next time.